like the best oncologist on earth has probably looked at, I don't know, like 1,000 cases in his lifetime, and he came up with whatever decision based on that. AI can look at 1,000 cases in a day, right? So if I am a patient, I would definitely trust what AI would say versus what an oncologist would tell me, and I wouldn't care why he came up with this decision. I just know that it is based on hundreds of thousands of cases that it's seen, and I wouldn't really care that much about why, because in some scenarios it simply can't tell me why. It just knows. It's just the same as an oncologist knows about why this is the scenario, why this is the case. So he would tell you because he wouldn't really, if you really kind of tried and tell him why, he probably can't really pin down why this is his decision. It's probably a combination of all of the patterns, all of the things that are accumulated in his brain over the years. And it's very, very similar when it comes to AI.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Intelligent Future podcast. In today's episode, I chatted with Dr. Nur Shaker, who is a holder of a PhD in computer science and also a founder of various startups in the field of AI in healthcare, in particular in using AI to diagnose and treat cancer. First, I talked to Dr. Noor about her biography and what motivated her to become a well-known AI expert as well as a multi-startup founder. Then we attempted to answer various questions. One of them was, can AI be effective in diagnosing cancer? Also, how does AI actually know how to diagnose such issues? How is it actually trained? How does it work? And also, when AI makes a decision, or let's say augments a human pathologist in diagnosing a patient, is it possible for it to be explainable? Can we explain how it actually arrived at a certain decision or a certain diagnosis? And we also talked about the ethics of AI in that field and many other issues. I hope you'll find it fun and enjoyable and useful. And now I leave you with the podcast. Noor, welcome to the podcast. I'm very happy to have you.
Thank you very much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Excellent. If you can tell us a little bit about your background, what made you where you are today, and multi-serial entrepreneur in AI, if you can go as far back as you can.
Oh, wow. Okay. So as far as I can remember, so I'm Syrian. I grew up in Syria. Did my bachelor in computer science engineering. I was among the first to enter that field back when it was pretty new in Syria. So I was very lucky to kind of be in that field early on, specialized in artificial intelligence back then, which was then considered more of like a robotic and Terminator kind of style. So very, very futuristic. No one believed it's going to work or it's going to have any value in the future. But I somehow saw something magical about it, and I wanted to dive deeper. So did my got very lucky to have to get a scholarship for artificial intelligence at KU Leuven in Belgium. So did my master there. And after finishing my master, I was very much interested in adaptive systems. So systems or computer systems, basically, that can understand the human being, understand how they're feeling and what they're thinking, and react or change the content based on that interaction. Obviously, computer games was a kind of the ideal scenario to study that kind of interaction, because there's a lot of emotions that people exhibit when they play computer games. And it was very interesting from an AI point of view as well, because you get people interested in playing games easily. So it's a very nice modality to collect a lot of data and study AI on a very kind of large scale. So also was lucky to get a scholarship for a PhD at IT University in Copenhagen, which was the kind of the go-to center in computer games in Europe. So joined the center for my PhD. And my plan was to finish my PhD and go back to Syria to kind of start a business there. By the
Mhm.
time I finished my PhD, the war started in Syria, so I couldn't go back. My plans changed a little bit, and I was lucky to get about 500,000 in funding from the Danish government to do my postdoc on any research topic that I wanted to do. So continued my line of work in academia as a postdoc in adaptive systems and active learning and understanding curiosity, try to model engagement and fun and challenging aspects around human emotions in computer systems and inform decision making in how like these systems make decision making. So that was pretty much in a way generative AI combined with some elements of human effective computing, understanding of humans in the loop. So did my postdoc. I started my assistant professorship as well in Copenhagen. Um, and back to your point about like from kind of academia to entrepreneurship and how that happened.
Mhm.
So by the time I started my assistant professorship, my mother passed away for lung cancer. So
Sorry.
that changed, yeah, that really changed a lot about how I'm thinking and what do I want to do next and where am I going.
Mhm.
So I ended up leaving academia, moving to the industry, and start working on applications of AI in the healthcare and life science sector.
Mhm.
I think I'm quite fortunate in kind of being in the AI arena pretty early on, and then being able to kind of catch up to all the advancements in AI, and then being able also to implement them in fields where they can make a very big impact and where they can benefit humanities in a way that I probably would have never thought of doing when I started studying AI.
Wonderful, wonderful. It's always fascinating to hear, successful and bright people's journey like yourself. So I wanna, expand a little bit on the point when you switched from academia to industry, or having your own startup. I think you said partially you were motivated by wanting to cure, cancer patients, and you were affected by the story of your mom. May God bless her soul. Uh, so, if you could tell me a little bit as to why you couldn't achieve some of this objective in academia. You could have made this your research area, for instance, but you chose to have your own business. Did you think there is more impact in business, for instance, compared to academia?
Yeah, I have a lot of appreciation for academia, like academic style of research and open-ended kind of question answering system. And it allows you to really explore areas in a kind of fascinating ways. But I think in terms of the productivity cycle and how quickly you can move things from research to industrial scale applications, that's not really something you can do easily in academia because of the funding, because of the people, like the type of people and the type of mindset you need to hire, and because of how quickly you can move outside academia versus inside. So I think it's just the difference between doing research just kind of for the pure enjoyment and curiosity and fascination of doing research
Mhm.
versus doing research for the purpose of making change in today's people's life.
Mhm.
Um, as a researcher, you don't really think about the impact your research will have on humanity, or you don't have to think about that. In the industry, that's like the number one thing on your mind is what impact am I making? How do I build a sustainable business? How do I keep my company and my employees happy and
Mhm.
making the salary
Mhm.
and economic units and that. So it's kind of a slightly different mindset.
Mhm.
But I think working in healthcare and life sciences is also very interesting for me because of the fact that it's a field that's always moving, and it's probably one of the very kind of few fields where you don't just need to you can't just simply take the research and translate it into something that's working. You need to do your own research to get it to work.
Mhm.
So it's kind of it still has that kind of research and cutting edge element, while at the same time having the impact and the life changing kind of applications. So it's a very interesting area. It's a very fascinating
Wonderful.
area to
And
be
I'll
in.
ask you a little bit about that. But before getting into that, let's get into the idea of having a startup as opposed to a stable job in academia. Because I'm an academic and I'm
Yeah.
exploring entrepreneurship in my own way, but I'm doing it in parallel to what I do right now. So let me expand on the idea that you completely switched to a startup, and you said that you had more freedom and you felt like this will bring you more joy because it has more impact on people's lives. But it must have been a little bit difficult at the beginning, right? To make
Still
the
difficult.
switch. Exactly. And also the fact that you probably had to wear many hats. So tell us, yeah, if you could elaborate a little bit on the difficulty
Yeah.
at the beginning and how you resolved these issues.
I think it's starting a company is difficult. It's a lot of stress because you have to wear a lot of hats. So you're like out of a sudden you're not a researcher with your own kind of computer and you're like reading and writing and coding and all of that like in a specific topic.
Mhm,
You're out of a sudden like if I talk about like my day, right? It's like part of it is talking to investors, part of it is talking to customers, part
mhm,
of it is talking to my team and employees, and part of it is hiring people and
mhm,
motivating them and getting interesting and hardworking people, smart people to join the company. So it's a lot of things that they're constantly in your mind every single time of your
mhm,
day.
mhm,
And then it's like you have the technology and we need to make sure that's working and all of that.
mhm.
So it is wearing more than more hats than what you would have to wear if you're a researcher, definitely.
Mhm.
And it's
Mhm.
and because of that, it's a lot of there's the probability that something might go wrong is higher, right? Because you have a
Exactly.
lot of things happening at the same time. So
Exactly.
it's really like a roller coaster.
Mhm.
And it's not the kind of thing that gets easier over time. So I'm now in the kind of process of working on my third company, and I literally can't say it's easier than the previous ones because it's a
Mhm.
different problem with different set of
Yeah.
customers, technology, and all of it. So everyone is completely different. You get a lot of experience, so you know how like to be a better manager and how to manage things and especially emotions
Wow.
better.
Wonderful.
Uh, but it's still difficult, and I think it's a very subjective and personal thing. Some people thrive with that, and some people simply don't like it. Some people can't
Mhm.
manage it well.
Mhm.
I like it. I personally like it, and I like the kind of the different challenges and the different
Mhm.
roles. I like kind of I like change, generally speaking. I,
Excellent.
I get unsettled, like very kind of irritated if I stay in the same place, for
Mhm.
instance, for a long time.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I like change. So I like kind of that kind of lifestyle.
Mhm.
But I do agree, it's probably not for everyone. And
Mhm.
I would say probably the best way to do it is to either join a startup and get a sense about how things are done, or to
Mhm.
start your own and see if it is for you, it's not for you. And
Mhm.
you always have
Mhm.
the chance to go back to, I don't know, to a more
Yeah,
stable
something
job.
else.
Yeah.
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 Wonderful. And I think I'm going to ask a question about what made you successful. You partially answered it. I think it's in you that you want to change, and I think you are influenced by the impact that you leave on people's lives. But if you could tell us, I'm sure success is not easy, especially as a startup, because most startups actually fail, statistically speaking. But yours succeeded, thank God, alhamdulillah. So if you could tell us, like, why do you think your startup had this amazing success? Is it the idea that you had? Is it the passion? Is it the team, the investors? Tell us.
Um, I think it's the lack of choice, to be honest. I've been thinking about it for a lot of
Mhm.
time. I
Mhm.
think one of the main drivers for success, even if you read like about the great people like Ford, for instance, or
Mhm.
Disney, or
Mhm.
I think in my view, the reason that these people manage to succeed and build big companies is because they have no choice but to do it, right?
Mhm.
It's not like they can quit.
Mhm.
It wasn't really an option. It's
Okay.
either that you're doing this or like there is nothing else that you can do.
Mhm.
And I think for me that was maybe the reason, because if I don't do this, I honestly don't know what else I can be doing.
Mhm.
It's just that this is the only option. So I can either make it work or I'll try again. I'll keep trying until it
Wonderful.
works. Now, whether that's like a pivoting, whether it's looking for another vertical, whatever it takes, basically. But
Mhm.
I will make it work. That's
Mhm. Mhm.
I think that's kind of a mentality or like a way of thinking.
Excellent. So,
I don't know the right answer to this, to be honest. I've been thinking about
yeah.
it for a long time,
There
but
probably, it's probably isn't like one recipe for everyone. I think different people are different. But I think one thing that probably contributed is I think success runs in your family. I think you have siblings that are, mashallah, as successful as you are. So that probably has contributed that you grew up in a successful family that pushed you academically and in other ways. Is that right?
so I have two sisters who are pathologists in the US. My brother is computer science as well. And alhamdulillah, yeah, they're pretty much they're all successful, and I think they're all driven, which is
Mhm.
something very nice to have. Yeah.
Excellent, mashallah. All right, I'm going to switch now to the startups that you have founded that are focused on diagnosing and perhaps curing cancer by means of AI. Um, Now, this podcast is meant for the general audience, but also the audience who is interested in AI in general. So, if you could tell us, obviously, you're not going to reveal the secrets of your startups here, but if you can tell us a little bit about the kind of AI you use, supervised learning, unsupervised learning, neural networks, LLMs. What kind of AI do you use in order
Yeah.
to provide this supposedly accurate diagnosis in cancer?
Yeah, so it's been, I think, 7 years now that I've been working on AI application in
Mhm,
life science and healthcare, generally speaking. We worked in my previous two companies on drug discovery, and we were using a lot of LLMs or language models, generally speaking. And now we're doing a lot of cancer diagnostics from tissue samples, which requires a lot of foundation vision models. So I've experience working on both. So for drug discovery, if I'm going to start there, you use basically the kind of the language of proteins or the language of chemistry is very well represented as sequences of characters,
mhm,
which allow us to kind of capture a lot of information about the folding of the proteins or the chemical structure and how it interacts with the protein.
mhm,
So you can pretty much apply language models to also capture that kind of space and be able to innovate or to design novel drugs for specific diseases. And that's something we've worked on, and we actually worked on successfully. So we managed to find novel hits for certain targets that are known to be challenging. When it comes to diagnosis and prognosis, so that's basically taking a tissue sample or biopsy or sample from human patients, and then being able to look at that instead of looking at it under the microscope, which is the standard way of doing things, you would scan that image, upload it to a computer, and then an AI system can look at that and tells you where the cancer is, how severe it is, in which stage in the patient journey the patient is. And it can also tell you things that at the moment a human pathologist can't really tell you, which is whether a certain treatment would be effective on certain patients, or whether you should screen this patient in a 2 years time instead of 5 years time because of high risk profile and so on and so forth. So there's like a lot of a huge amount of information that are stored in human samples or in human cells, or like anything like from protein to drug to human tissue samples. And I feel like human ability to digest that amount of information and come up with the right strategy to
mhm,
stratify patients or to design drugs is simply not compatible with the amount of information that's out there.
mhm,
And I feel well, we actually know that AI can actually solve a lot of these issues. Not necessarily easily, but it can solve them with the right data and with the right cleaning and with the right strategy. So at the moment, our work is prominently around using vision models, foundation vision models to look at the slides. But we also have now interesting applications in combining vision models with LLMs. So you can interact with the system using text to kind of pick up cases that are similar, for instance, to the current patient that you're working on. So you can see what other pathologists have said about it, or what other diagnoses have been given on a specific patient. So there's also a lot of interesting applications when it comes to the overlap and intersections between vision and LLMs at the same time.
Wonderful. So I want to go back to a point that you said while you were describing the process of how the AI systems that you're building provide accurate diagnosis. And you said that the AI systems are more accurate than an average or even an expert pathologist. And the reason is because a tissue that has cancer or a healthy tissue, there are a lot of variables to look into. So for someone like a layperson who's not like, I'm not a physician, I'm not obviously an expert in that field, like what kind of variables? Is it the structure of the cell, the color, like what kind of variables do we look at to identify that there is cancer, or does AI not care? We just train it on a massive data set and then somehow it will figure it out.
There are two types, as you probably know about, like when it comes to machine learning. There is the supervised machine learning where you train it from a human examples, and there's the unsupervised learning, and we combine both.
Mhm.
Um, the the reason I can do better is not just because of the combination. Let's just kind of take them one by one. In the supervised learning settings, we basically treat AI on both cancer diagnosis in a sense that a pathologist would come in and say, this is cancer, this is not cancer. And then AI will learn that kind of pattern. And they're usually morphological patterns. So the size of the cells, the color, the location, and like morphological features basically about how they structure, and the stroma and like the kind of the surrounding tissues and all of that account to what makes a cancer and what makes the healthy tissue a healthy tissue. So there's a lot of human expert knowledge coming into the scene. And the reason AI can do better is simply because there's a lot of objectivity when it comes to assessment. And we're talking really now about the simplest case, right? Like cancer, no cancer. Is this cancer, or does this tissue has cancer or not? That's the simplest scenario. And a lot of pathologists sometimes just simply miss it, whether because sometimes it's kind of one or two cells that are isolated that the pathologist didn't really pay attention to. When we talk about, you need to think about the scale here. When we talk about a human tissue sample, you're basically looking at a glass with a tiny tissue under the microscope. That tiny tissue has hundreds of thousands of cells.
God.
So you have to kind of zoom in and out in different areas and scan the whole tissue to look at abnormalities. And sometimes people, even the expert pathologists, could miss it. It's as simple as that. So with kind of AI copilot or AI assistant, it can simply tell you that you've missed this area. Just check it out. There might be something that you missed there. Or it can tell you there is cancer there with high probability. You might want to check that out before signing the case. So that's very valuable, because in some scenarios, if you talk about breast cancer, for instance, or colon cancer, there are up to sometimes 30% of cases that are missed. That's a huge number.
Yeah, that is huge.
That's a huge number, and you have the capacity not to miss them. So we really have no excuse like not to use AI in those scenarios. And then there are other things that are kind of more advanced. So if you take a pathology report and like what the pathologists need to fill in, there are information about the stage, for instance. So is it stage 1? Is it stage 2? Those information are used by clinicians to know whether they should operate, for instance. Should I remove the organ? Should I remove part of it? How severe should I go? And all of this information, or most of it, is based, for instance, in some scenarios on cell counting. So you count different number of cells under the microscope, and from that you estimate how severe the cancer is. And that is at the moment is really like witchcrafting, because it's just simply impossible for a human to count cells under the microscope. So what happens is that they estimate the numbers. In some scenario, that like the exact number is not really important. The range is important. But in some other indications, the number of cells, for instance, in certain areas is very indicative of how severe the cancer will be. So it's very important to count the number of cells accurately. And that's also something AI can do precisely. So also it's a very kind of straightforward applications. And the third thing is that whatever we're counting and we are including in the report today is just what humans have thought of as important, because we haven't really managed to explore the whole space that is relevant. But with AI now, we can go beyond that. We can count everything in the tissue and we can see what's important. We can see whether the regulation doesn't really include everything that is known to be like is supposed to be important. So we can start changing the regulations to include more and more biomarkers that are relevant to how we score the disease, to how we stage it, to how we risk stratify it, and all of that. So there is a huge amount of information. My sister is I probably mentioned, is a pathologist in the US, and they would tell you that what they can see under the microscope is probably 20 to 30% of what is in there. And we can definitely increase that. And there's definitely a huge room for novel biomarkers that are linked to each patient and how they would respond to treatment and how we can do healthcare way better.
Excellent. Fascinating. Do you think in the future AI will go beyond just leveraging existing human wisdom and human knowledge in that domain? Because as far as I can tell, the AI systems that you build, they've leveraged the expertise of pathologists, but of course they exceeded their performance because we're talking about an AI system here, which does many things very fast as opposed to the average human. So that's why they've exceeded the human. But like, could they go beyond that training of the pathologists and come up with something new that even pathologists themselves haven't thought of?
Yeah, that's where we left the previous point, right? So we talked about supervised learning, but I mentioned we also use unsupervised learning, and the reason we use unsupervised learning is precisely because of that. We know that we can't teach AI only based on human knowledge. First of all, because human knowledge is not complete, and second of all, we sometimes simply don't know what we're looking for. We know that this category of people responded to treatment and this category did not respond to treatment, but we don't know why. What differentiate those people? And we can't even tell just by looking at their tissue samples or looking at their genomics. So it's kind of just if you have a cancer patient, it's literally guessing. So you give them a treatment, you see if they respond, and if they don't, you start on them on another one. And it's a trial and error process. And it doesn't really have to be that way. There are more informed way of doing this. And when we use unsupervised learning, what we're doing is throwing at the AI all that information that we have from the tissue samples without any human knowledge or human input, just kind of the tissue samples as they are taken from a human being. And we basically let AI predict from those tissue samples was a treatment response, for instance, or what stage the patient is at, or whether the patient will have a relapse, so the cancer will recur in 5 years' time. So all that type of information are information that at the moment we don't have human-driven biomarkers to tell us those kind of endpoints. So by throwing that information on AI systems and letting them predict those endpoints, we're basically forcing them to go to the tissue and see what's in the tissue sample that leads to that type of outcome. And how to differentiate then, is there a line to draw between the responders and not responders, between people who will relapse and people who won't. And that's actually a very successful application, and it's been proven that it's working in certain indications, such as prostate cancer. There's a test for that just approved in the US last year. We're working on a similar one for colon cancer and pancreatic cancer. So it's a very, very exciting area, but it will require a lot of data and a lot of clean data to train AI models in that kind of way.
Absolutely. I'll ask you about the data, but before getting into the data, as far as I know, reading about you and listening to some of the interviews, is that the AI systems that you build in your companies tackle the two stages, the diagnosis and the curing stages. But what about preventing cancer to begin with? I know this is much bigger and you need much more data. But for instance, I think some humans are more susceptible to cancer than others. That depends on their diet, that depends on their DNA, perhaps where they live, the pollution in the area. Obviously, I'm not an expert, but have you thought of that perhaps as a future potential for your company? Or do you think this is a huge problem that it's difficult to tackle at the moment?
Prevention is very exciting area, and I think it all starts with prevention. To be honest, it's just it's not an area that we've been focusing on
Mhm.
for a number of reasons. But I think one of the main reason that is hard, that's like really challenging, is because this multimodal modality of like input or models that you need to know about, or to have access to that amount of information from different modalities that you need access to build a reliable model. We have, for instance, in breast cancer, we have biomarker that if you have like, if you're hair positive, then the likelihood that you will have breast cancer that like in your 40s or 50s is more likely. So you can early on start being on some sort of screening program that screens you more often, and so on and so forth. There are like also other indications in inflammatory bowel disease or like colon cancer. So if you have certain biomarkers, you can start screening early on. So that's kind of screening program.
Mhm.
But I think you're kind of spot on, because there are like lots of, whether it's genomic, whether it's where you live, or whether it's just kind of the pollution in the area, and
Mhm.
there are a lot of unknown, to be honest.
Factors, yeah.
Your diet, your microbes, but there's also now a lot of
Or even
research.
your mental health as well.
Exactly, there's like lots of variables
Mhm.
that needs to be captured on a long period of time, and
Mhm.
then need to be pulled out and put into one system
Mhm.
that can then from there come up with data-driven and accurate suggestions. And at the moment, it feels a lot isolated. So like people working on healthcare biomarkers and measuring your sleep and your mental health and your
Yeah.
stress level, your glucose and your blood pressure, and then so on and so forth.
Mhm.
And from there, like try and tell you more informed decision to make better informed decision about your diets, and
Mhm.
whether you should be sleeping more or resting more, and so on, which will improve things over time. But
Mhm.
I think the bottleneck here is data availability and accessibility.
Mhm.
And in pathology or in drug discovery, we do have access to that data, and that's why those areas are thriving at the moment.
Mhm.
Probably in 10 years' time, we will have multimodal data sets about human behavior and
Yeah.
social and genomics impact that we can link together. But it's a fascinating area.
Absolutely. Let me ask you about the data sets, and since you brought that up multiple times. So it's obviously no secret that it's not easy to have high quality data. What's your secret? Mashallah, you are able to collect all those very rich data sets that your AI systems are trained on.
It's really no secret, to be honest. It's just knocking on a lot of doors and telling people what we do and what's kind of the aim, and how we're planning to go with this and improve people's life, and obviously our expertise and why we believe we can succeed, and so on and so forth. So it's finding those champions, those people who are like also motivated and have the same goals, share the same values as we do, and take it step by step. Basically, you get like one champion, and you expand from there. You build a study, you take it to other people, you
Mhm.
showcase what you're doing, and you reach out to the next one and to the next one. It's a kind of, it's a process. It takes time,
Of course.
but it's definitely worthwhile
Mhm.
doing.
Excellent. And are there some existing free data sets as well that some researchers perhaps who are listening to us could
Yeah.
be interested in exploring?
There are definitely like some, they're like the TCGA, for instance, data set, which is in specifically in pathology, it has a lot of freely available sources, like all of the kind of WSI, whole slides, images, data, plus the patient outcome as well.
Mhm.
Um, so these are things I would say that you can start playing with, you can build
Mhm.
your first use case on. But
Mhm.
the kind of the issue with those kind of data sets is like you can build your proof points, but it's not enough to go to market with whatever you build. So it's a nice starting point,
Mhm.
but then you need to kind of for commercial purposes, you will need to go that step further and talk to hospitals and talk to clinical centers and start collecting more kind of cleaner and more reliable data sets.
Mhm. Mhm. And when do you feel confident enough that this AI system will fly in a hospital? I mean, does it depend on the data points that the AI system was trained on, or does it depend on the accuracy rates? You obviously test those AI systems, like if you, yeah, tell us.
Yeah. It's a Okay, it's a process. So we start doing retrospective studies, basically getting access to like historical data on patients. We build AI system on those. You get those systems obviously validated with the known accuracy measure, sensitivity, specificity, and other parameters pathologists are usually interested in. And then you get those models validated by human pathologist expert to see if they're doing the right things. And then you move on to a prospective study. So you put them live to work side by side by an expert pathologist, and you see if they're really valuable, if they're doing the right things. And you obviously do your study with a number of hospitals to increase the size of the cohort, to increase the diversity. And even when it comes to commercialization, it's a stepwise process. So you can start commercializing when you have one model working at a certain hospital, and you can say it can only apply to this type of population within, like, working on this type of scan document within this hospital. And then you start expanding from there. It takes a bit of time. But again, well, yeah, it's like everything else in life, I guess. You have to, yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Wonderful. I'll switch gears a little bit. I saw a post of yours on LinkedIn the other day about DeepSeek, which is a large language model. So you said earlier in this interview that you also use LLMs, large language models, in embedded within your AI systems. Why? You didn't use them before, but as soon as they were launched, you adopted them. How are they helping you? Because large language models aren't necessarily focused on, curing cancer or diagnosing cancer. How are they helping you?
So we used them before when they were like not necessarily as large as they are today. So, but like language models for like, if you talk about like protein folding, for instance, it's a problem that is like now very well kind of solved using large language models. So they can model the sequences of amino acids very well. So that's a kind of straightforward application. At the moment, we use them to kind of build interfaces that are more interactive. So you can, for instance, upload a histopathology slide to the platform, and you can ask the system, what do you see in the slide, and it can tell you there probably, like, there's like the kind of the distribution of the cells, the likelihood that there is cancer in some areas, which organ this tissue is coming from, what's the likely diagnosis and stage, and so on and so forth. So it's kind of a way of interacting with the system with a more user-friendly way, I would say.
Oh, fantastic. That actually somehow I wanted to allude to that in my next question, which was about conversational AI, being able to interact with an AI system. So apparently you're doing it via an LLM. But I was also wondering, not just from a doctor's perspective, but also from a patient's perspective, that they interact with your AI system to understand more about their case and how they can help themselves, of course, along with the care that they're getting from the hospital. Is that something you're probably expanding on in the future, or is it just an AI system for doctors at the moment?
So at the moment, it's an AI system for pathologists. And I think the reason we kind of limiting it to that kind of space is because pathologists are still the expert. And we're trying just to help them with like, if there's like some sort of gap in their knowledge that they need to be aware of, then we can mine cases and tell them kind of more insight and more in-depth information about what's in the slide or what similar slides have been categorized at. When it comes to patient, I think we need to be more careful with what you communicate with patient, how you're communicating, and the kind of how deep you can go and the accuracy of the systems and so on and so forth. So I think when it comes to medical communication, there are probably other companies working in kind of in that space. But I think it's a space that requires, at least for this point in time, more rigorous regulatory pathways to make sure that you're not giving any wrong information or misleading information.
Absolutely. Okay, so there is a need for it, but right now the focus in your business is not on that front. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. We're not really looking to replace pathologists at the moment. We're kind of more kind of assistant.
Excellent. Excellent. Fantastic. Okay, well, since you mentioned that, I didn't really have that in mind preparing for this interview.
Are we replacing people?
Are we? Are we? Will you do that sometime in the future, you think?
I was actually just discussing this in the morning with my husband. Like, I have a daughter, she's 11 years old, and we were thinking about like
Mashallah.
she what should she study and what's kind of the career path that she would need to go through. She's very excited about being a pathologist. And I was telling my husband, by the time she probably gonna have to decide, pathologist is not gonna be a thing. So it's I think you'll always have a human pathologist giving the final, just as like radiologist, right? It's like pathology is now pretty much kind of, I would say, 5 to 10 years behind where radiology is. But we still have radiologists making the final call, and we still have radiologists reviewing cases. It just at the moment it's assistant, it's making sure they're making the right call. My belief is that AI will definitely be more accurate than human. And the human will probably be there just kind of an interface. But replacing completely, I'm not. Probably if I'm bold, I would say in 10 years, in 10 years time. Yeah, but not before then. It takes time. Yeah.
And who knows how the career will change by then.
Exactly.
Career of pathologist, yeah.
Exactly.
I think they might be more of like collaborating with AI. So as such, they'll acquire more skills on the way. Wonderful. Okay, so my almost last question to you, which is about ethics in AI. Now, this is a big area. A lot of people are talking about it. Some people are developing expertise on it. Okay, so when it comes to ethics in AI, the idea, one important idea that I feel might be related to the AI systems that you're developing is explainable AI. Because your AI systems provide a diagnosis and maybe potential, I don't want to say cure, but treatment to certain cancerous issues. Don't you think it can be useful also to explain why it recommended that or why it thought that? And as opposed to just a black box kind of, decisions that it's making.
Yeah. I think when it comes to explainability and AI model, I feel a lot of the reason why we want AI to be explainable is just to satisfy our own curiosity as a human. We want to know why it came up with that decision and what are the biomarkers that it was looking for. So I am, as a human, can then look for those and came up with the same thing. I think we ask, generally speaking, we ask of AI more than we ask of a human. If we go to a clinician, if we go to an oncologist and he tells us that certain facts about our disease, we don't go back and ask, why did you think so? What area in the slide did you look at to come up with this? Or like, how do you justify your decision? We just trust what they say because we believe it's based on years and years of experience, and they've seen similar cases and they came up with this based on that. And AI can do this, the same thing, but on a way larger scale. So if you're like the best oncologist on earth has probably looked at, I don't know, like 1,000 case in his lifetime, and he came up with whatever decision based on that. AI can look at 1,000 case in a day. Right? So if I am a patient, I would definitely trust what AI would say versus what an oncologist would tell me, and I wouldn't care why he came up with this decision. I just know that it is based on hundreds of thousands of cases that it's seen, and I wouldn't really care that much about why, because in some scenarios it simply can't tell me why. It just knows. It's just the same as an oncologist knows about why this is the scenario, why this is the case. So he would tell you because he wouldn't really, if you really kind of tried and tell him why, he probably can't really pin down why this is his decision. It's probably a combination of all of the patterns, all of the things that are accumulated in his brain over the years. And it's very, very similar when it comes to AI.
That's exactly right. I mean, people who study neural networks, which is a way of how the machine can learn and form patterns as it learns. Not all the patterns can be explained as how they got formed within the neural networks. And as such, I think you're right, as in not everything can be explained. But I think what can perhaps be revealed to the public so that they are assured that AI, at least this AI system, is working on their behalf and it's ethical, is the sources of the data.
No, absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And this is a critical point, right? Because AI system can be very, very good in certain areas and really bad in others. And that very much is driven by the data it's trained on. And I think in the medical sector, they've been very careful when it comes to, for instance, in regulating AI system. You have to disclose the cohort of patient that the AI system is trained on, the type of scanners that's been used, the demographics of the people. If you're trained on pure white people, you can't really use that model on Black or Asian or Mediterranean people, like other ethnicities, right? Because it simply won't perform as well.
Different genetics,
You have
different make, yeah.
Exactly. It's a completely different data points that you can't really assume that AI is going to be as good at. So you have to disclose all that information. But so you know the strength and you know the limitations. But that's also a good starting point because you can take that model, you can apply the same technology, you can refine the cohort, and you can go on from there. But definitely, but I think it's the same with the clinicians as well, right? A clinician in the US probably wouldn't diagnose people in I don't know in Syria or in
Yes.
whatever else other region as well as they would in their kind of geography.
That's exactly right. Wonderful. Okay, so my last question to you today, for young people who are aspiring to become entrepreneurs like you, let's say in the AI space, because the AI space now is very hot. A lot of people want to get into it. Do you have a word for them? Any advice?
I think there's a lot of interest in AI. I don't think they find it challenging to find internship, to get into like just kind of knowing like what are the hot areas, the hot topic. I think AI is, I keep telling people AI is just a tool, right? It's like a hammer. You can apply it in so many different things. So it's not just a matter of, oh, I like AI, I want to learn about AI. Find more about the applications. Where do you want to apply it? What do you want to apply it to? What's the kind of the end game? What are you aiming for? And
The
then
problem that you want to solve. Yeah.
exactly, not just the solution. AI is the solution. You need the problem, and then focus on those. But you always have to start with the fundamentals. And I think now it's an exciting time because there's a lot of information online for free, available for free, and courses for free where you can get started without even having to be at one of those top universities or what have you.
Absolutely.
It's all online, and you can do a lot on your own. And again, if you've shown that you've learned, like you've self-motivated and you learn on your own, I find that as an advantage, to be honest. I I usually don't hire from the big kind of universities and big names. I hire people who like individually motivated and hardworking. Those are the people who can really make a difference.
Wonderful. Are you hiring now, just in case? And not for me.
We're always looking for smart, motivated,
Okay.
hardworking
So
people.
this is
Yeah,
an invitation for anyone who's
absolutely.
aspiring to become an AI engineer in Dr. Noor's startup. Thank you so much, Noor, for the great conversation. I had a lot of fun and definitely one of my best interviews.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Have a good time, and thank you very much for inviting me. I really enjoyed it as well.
Thank you.